graders. This is your Bible video for Monday, April 20th. Um, so just recording this here from home, and some of you have been asking if you could see Cooper again. So I just wanted him to be in this video for a little bit. We'll see how long he stays here. Sometimes he sits for a long time and then he decides it's time to get up and move. So we'll see. But anyway, he can say hi to all you guys. Let's see if he can. Oh, there we go. Maybe a little more. Yeah, he's pretty tired these days. All he does is lay around here with everyone being home. So he loves to just kind of take naps and find a good spot to sleep, and spends most of his day laying by someone, whoever will sit long enough. So anyway, wanted you guys to see Cooper again, but I don't think I think he's tired, so I think he's gonna sleep again. He is the only one I sometimes do my videos too. He's like my only audience, and he's a pretty good listener. So we'll see how long he stays here with us. Anyway, today we are looking at Genesis 40. So sometimes I have you guys read the chapter and then we talk about it. Today what I think we'll do is we're just going to read it together. So if you can just pause the video and go get your Bible and then open it up to Genesis 40. I think the best thing for us is just to read this together as like a pretend class. And so we're just going to read through it. I'm going to pause in a couple places and explain a little bit of what's going on there, and then talk about it a little bit with you guys, and then that will be what we're going to cover for today. So this is Genesis 40, and this is titled in my Bible, The Cupbearer and the Baker. So here we go. So Genesis 40. Okay, it starts out. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. Okay, so they're just all in there together. We aren't exactly sure why they got put in prison, what they actually did to offend the Pharaoh or to break the law, but we just know they've both been placed in the same prison as Joseph. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. Okay, so we're going to pause right here for just a minute and cover something that is it's a bit interesting, because the same guy that we studied at the beginning of Genesis 37, Joseph, the one who actually, just without even thinking about it, seems like went and spilled his dreams to his brothers who really didn't like him and were probably pretty obvious about that. Here the same guy is now noticing that two of the people under his care are dejected. So I always like to stop here and kind of encourage all of us to think about this, because Joseph had enough, I guess, I don't even know what we'd call it, perspective now, or just maturity, that he actually stops and notices when people are feeling dejected, when people are upset. I don't know if the Joseph a few years ago, when he was 17 and running around telling his dreams to people, I don't know if he would have noticed those kinds of things. But now he notices that these two guys under his care are looking dejected. That means his eyes are up. He was noticing where people are at. This is just something I always like for us to kind of analyze about our own selves, and that is, do we notice when other people are upset? Do we notice when other people feel dejected? Are our eyes up and looking, or sometimes our eyes down and so concerned more just with where we're at in our own problems that we don't notice the problems of others, and aren't maybe ready to help. So just something to kind of pause and think about for our own lives. Would we be like the Joseph who was 17 and not really noticing these things, or would we be this more mature Joseph, noticing others and their moods and emotions? Okay, so let's keep going. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Okay, so just a couple verses later, we see another kind of interesting thing about Joseph, and that is he immediately points them to God. And he says, "Don't interpretations belong to God?" So we've got this kid who's maturing and growing up, and we immediately see something about his heart, and that is that he knows who's in control. He knows what only God can do. So he immediately points them to God's the only one that can give interpretations for that kind of thing. I think we see another maturity point in Joseph, that he is understanding and realizing that he needs to give God the glory. He needs to give God the credit. So he immediately points these men to God and saying that's God's business. That's the only thing that he can do. That's in his control and his power. And so I guess that's something that I've been thinking about, especially during this time with the coronavirus. You hope that maybe this is a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people to see, okay, maybe I'm not in control, and I need to put my life and my happiness and my emotions with the Creator of the universe, who is in control of all things. And so we hope that through this virus and through this time of quarantine, that people will come to know the Lord, that they will want the controller of the universe to be their God. So definitely a prayer for this time and what we're going through. Okay, so let's keep going. So then he says to him, after he says the interpretations belong to God, he says, "Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness and mention me to Pharaoh." So he's hoping, he's trying, putting a little plug there. And then he gives a bit of a little bit of a history lesson, and he says, "I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being in this dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "Oh, I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is what it means," Joseph said. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Okay, not such a great, as good of interpretation as maybe he was hoping for. Now, the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Okay, so end of the story. So bottom line is that we've got these two men put in prison. They both have dreams. They both get interpretations via Joseph through the power of God, and they both come true. So the chief cupbearer, he's back in place, and the baker gets killed. Okay, right at the end though, I think this is something that maybe we've all felt at times, and it said, Joseph had asked if, he knew that this was going to come true, and he had asked, remember me, give a good word, and right at the end it says that this man forgot him. Okay, so I think we all have times where we feel forgotten, where we don't feel like we've been remembered. What we can know is that we're in pretty good company, because I'm guessing Joseph felt that way too. He felt forgotten. He did not get remembered, even though he had done this amazing interpretation for this man. And now we aren't going to go too much into the next chapter, but it's going to be 2 years before he's going to be remembered. So he's going to be sitting in that prison for 2 more years, waiting, wondering if he will ever be remembered. So there's going to be 2 more years before he is brought before the Pharaoh. When he gets brought before the Pharaoh, there's going to be some interesting conversations. And one thing we are going to know because of what Joseph says, and that is he gives God the glory once again, right in front of the Pharaoh, who, and we'll talk more when we get to that chapter, but that was pretty daring for what he did in front of the Pharaoh. So even though he sits there and waits, that would be 730 days of waiting to be remembered. Joseph didn't get bitter. Joseph, we don't see he gets resentful. He gets a critical spirit. But when he does have the opportunity to go in front of the Pharaoh, he's going to again point people to God. So that's coming up in the next few chapters. We'll talk some more about these things. But just something for us to think about. Sometimes we're going to feel forgotten. Sometimes we're going to feel left out. Sometimes, even maybe in this quarantine, we'll feel isolated. And we have to remember that God hasn't forgotten us. God hasn't left us. God's still with us. I know during this quarantine time, there might be things that God's working on our hearts. Maybe some things that we need to spend a little extra time. Maybe it's a relationship, or maybe it's getting more time for prayer, for more time for study of His Word. Maybe God, through this quarantine, is working on patience and in our lives, or self-control, or I don't know. There's numerous things that we could be working on, that He's maybe working on us. But I think just like Joseph, spent 2 more years sitting in that dungeon, waiting and hoping to get out. And just like we sit in quarantine or sit in a season of our lives, let's use it for God's glory and for God's good. And when that time is over, we want to be refined, a bit more refined, just like I believe Joseph is becoming and has become when he gets out of prison. So we'll work on more of those chapters here this week. But for now, we just covered Genesis 40. So you'll have to go back, reference your papers. You could begin working on that next page in your Life of Joseph book. So today is Monday. Hopefully you are working on your devotional and going over your verse. That will be on Zoom tomorrow. Also, Corrie ten Boom, make sure you're finishing up those 2 chapters, chapter 2 and 3, and we'll talk about that on Zoom tomorrow. So that's it for today, and hopefully we can just kind of think about these takeaways and different things that we're just learning from this man named Joseph. Okay, have a great afternoon. Thanks a lot. Bye.